Oh, good morning. And Maria, thank you very much again for your comments and for your work that you do. That's very, very important and encouraging to us. I do want to clear up one misconception that we're not all medical doctors here. It is called the Institute of Medicine, but I think especially over this forum is the idea that this is a public health topic. And public health is really a multidisciplinary field where the contributions are some made by physicians. Some people are physicians like Rodrigo who go on to become an epidemiologist and then go on to become a mayor of a city in Colombia, and then go on to become a researcher, and then go on back home to become a mayor again. But I think not only do careers cross these professional boundaries, but all of you represent many, many different professions and many different perspectives. And this is a very, very rich audience, crowded over on this side for warmth. I hope you are warm on that side. But you represent an amazing, amazing amount of knowledge and information and experience. And part of our function here is to bring together all of you to share your perspectives. And I hope that you will react to this panel with questions and comments. I want to say, too, that last week some very amazing things happened with respect to evidence. If you followed the news here today in this city, Washington, D.C., that's where we are. On Monday, there was a very special event here. Are you aware of that? There was an inauguration of an amazing president. It was an amazing event. And one of the things that's now being debated about the calls for evidence is whether Beyonce, more famous than us, lip-synced the music, or whether she really sang the Star-Spangled Banner. So people are saying, is there evidence? Let's go back and look. What did people say? Let's watch your mouth closely. Let's go back and check who played what during that time. So that's a question where people really want to use evidence. And as Maria said, in this area of child abuse, there's evidence, but people don't want to see it. They don't want to use it. And so what we want to look at is, when is evidence used? How is it used? How is it generated? How is it applied? And those are the questions that we really want to focus on here today. And last week, President Obama made another very, very important statement about evidence. He said that CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has to go back and start up again doing research on firearm injury prevention. That was really an important statement. And it was a long time coming. But why is that important? He basically said this threat to our children, and it's not just children, but the threat of firearm injuries is very, very important. And we need to know how to proceed. We need to collect evidence, and we need to do research on this topic. And we're going to start up again and collect the evidence, even though some people think we know enough to proceed without evidence and data. He said we don't. And this is too important a problem for us to guess about, and it's too important a problem for us to ignore. And what makes this problem particularly hard is that there are multiple objectives we're trying to solve in this area. We are trying to prevent firearm injuries and deaths, and at the same time in this country, we have a constitution, and it mandates us to also protect the rights of legitimate gun owners. We are trying to accomplish both of these objectives at the same time. If we were only trying to accomplish one, it would be easy, and we wouldn't need evidence, and we wouldn't need data, and we wouldn't need research. I think about the area of cancer. In cancer, you're trying to treat tumors that a patient may have. If the only thing you wanted to do was get rid of the tumor, it would be easy. We have some really good and effective anti-cancer drugs. The problem is they're toxic. And if you try to get rid of the tumor, you may also get rid of the patient. You'll certainly harm that patient and do harm. We're trying to do two things. We're trying to get rid of the tumor, and we're trying to protect the health and well-being of the patient. And that's why we have a constant search, why we constantly do research to find new drugs that can both get rid of the tumor and protect the health of the patient. It's not an easy idea that you can just figure out in your mind. In the same way, in this area of firearm injuries, we're trying to do both things, and it is hard. And we need to find out what works to satisfy both objectives. If all we wanted to do was prevent firearm injuries and deaths, we could say, round up all the guns, get rid of guns in the hands of civilians. We'd reduce a lot of firearm injuries and deaths. On the other hand, if all we wanted to do was protect the rights of legitimate gun owners, we'd say, don't do anything about this. Don't mention firearms. Don't talk about it. Don't pass any new policies. Just let it go. But we want to do both at the same time, and the question is hard. The answer requires research. We need to find out what works. We need the evidence. And President Obama said, to his great credit, we're going to get the evidence. We're going to get it. So these questions that our panelists are going to talk about are very much alive today. In fact, all of our panelists here have been working very hard for a very long time on very hard questions. Let me introduce them to you. What we're going to do is we're going to ask each of them to talk for about 5 minutes on why they have gathered evidence, how they use it, why it's important to them in the work that they do. And then we'll come back, I'll ask them some additional questions, they can ask each other questions, and then we'll ask you if you have some questions that you want to ask them. So let me introduce these extraordinary speakers to you. And we heard before that working in this field requires courage. It takes courage and it takes stubbornness. You can't give up in the face of opposition. You can't give up in the face of inadequate public recognition and interest. And these are people who are both courageous and persistent. Neil Boothby is the U.S. government's special advisor and senior coordinator on children in adversity, and he serves as USAID's senior expert on children in adversity. Neil is on leave from Columbia University, where he's the Alan Rosenfield Professor of Clinical Forced Migration and Health at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. His research focuses on the developmental outcomes of children growing up in abject poverty, war, and other adverse environments. Our second speaker is Daniela Liggiero, serves as a senior advisor for gender at the Office of the U.S. Global AIDS Coordinator, leading the inclusion of gender issues in HIV prevention, treatment, and care. Daniela is also one of the 3 co-chairs for the PEPFAR Gender Technical Working Group, and previously was OGAC's country support team lead for Haiti and Guyana, as well as team lead for Latin America and the Caribbean. As I introduce these people, think again about the areas in which they're working: forced migration, children growing up in abject poverty, war, adverse environments, women working in Haiti and Guyana. These are tough problems, and people are collecting evidence to help us solve them. Jerry Reed serves as vice president and director at the Education Development Center, where he oversees the Center for the Study and Prevention of Injury, Violence, and Suicide. He directs the federally funded National Suicide Prevention Resource Center and serves as co-director of the CDC-funded Injury Control Research Center for Suicide Prevention. His most recent contribution to the field of suicide prevention was serving as the task force co-lead with the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Regina Benjamin, in revising the U.S. National Strategy for Suicide Prevention, which was released on September 10th, 2012, as part of the work of the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention, a public-private partnership that was launched in 2010 to cultivate, catalyze, and champion suicide prevention in the United States. Mary Lou Leary is Acting Assistant Attorney General and is head of the Office of Justice Program. She oversees an annual budget of more than $2 billion dedicated to supporting state, local, and tribal criminal justice agencies, an array of juvenile justice programs, and a wide range of research, evaluation, and statistical efforts, and comprehensive services for crime victims. And again, we're delighted to have Mary Lou here. It represents, and I think you see, the interdisciplinary and interdepartmental collaboration that's required to solve some of these very tough problems. And let me begin with a question for Neil. Again, I'm delighted to have our panelists. And thank you all for coming here and thinking about this with us. I should say that when you speak, press the button for the red light, and when you have questions in the audience, if you can get to a microphone and press the button on the red light. We're trying to record this proceeding so that it's not only useful to share all of our perspectives here, but it will have a life after this and hopefully be widely disseminated. So push the red button when you want to talk. Let me start, Neil, with a question for you. On December 19th, the U.S. government launched its new policy on children in adversity at the White House, and it will be used to orient this $2.8 billion of foreign assistance annually. Preventing violence against children is now one of 3 government priorities. What kind of evidence have you collected? What kind of evidence was needed to help form this priority in this new direction? We'll come back to that, but let me give you a chance again. We're going to start with 5 minutes for each of you to talk about an important type of evidence that you've collected, why it's important in the work that you do, and then we'll come back to this question and the other questions. So